I feel bad because I like the guy, but I completely forgot to mention that Jeff Simmons was in the band for like the first 6 days of the tour. There's one circulating tape on which he's on. Um, didn't have much of an impact. He had been around since that Roxy recording after the shows, and then the winter tour and the April May tour. So 6 days, and then he left. So I am sorry for mentioning that. And I feel like I just did not praise this tour enough in the 35 minutes that follow. So many amazing songs. Echidna's Arf of You, ridiculous every night. The only fast version of Village of the Sun, excellent. Pygmy Twilight, just slow down, really hard funk, sometimes metal version. Just the dog meat all the dog meat stuff. Tamershi Dween, so many ridiculous songs and performances, and I just feel like it needed a little more sugar on top because this is by far Frank's best tour. But on to the rest of this video. What's up, people? Thank you for watching. My name is Shaggy, the opinionated hippie, currently and about to be finished ranking and reviewing the 26 Frank Zappa tours that Frank Zappa played during his life. And we are now at number one. That's all the energy I'm going to put into this is that drum roll. A poor drum roll. We are now at number one, Summer Fall 74. If you've watched more than 10 of these videos, that should not be a surprise to anybody. This is by far my favorite tour. As much as I praise and love all the others, they can't. In no way can they beat this one. To my ears, for me. In doing this list, ranking the 26 tours, there were pretty much 3 tours that at no point did I even consider moving them. The last one, 84. And then number 2, the 60s, and number 1, this one. Everything else, I was like, 70 and 71, those possibly could have switched. I considered moving stuff. Those 3 I did not. And number 1, and this one never, ever had a chance of being anything else. Almost from like the very beginning of my Zappa listening experience. It's just, there are so many incredible things I want to say about this band. And I was going to write them down, but I'm not good at reading my notes during these things. So I thought, I just hope that in stumbling through this video, I managed to remember all the praise I want to give it. But I think we're going to start with the band itself, because I think one of the reasons I love it is I love the sound of this band. It has a very, I guess, efficient sound would be, I don't know, that's maybe the wrong word, but it's a very, like, there's no wasted energy anywhere. Like, there's no rhythm guitar player, so Frank has to do all the guitar work. George Duke is the only keyboard player, so he's got to do all the keyboard work. We have a bass player, a drummer. Yes, we have a drummer and a percussionist, but that percussionist is Ruth Underwood, and she's been around for a couple years now, and Frank has really has given her own space in the songs, so she's not on top of the drummer, who at this point is Chester Thompson. This is his only tour in which he is the only drummer. In all the previous tours, he was with Ralph Humphrey. I guess I'll say this now before I forget. So I divided this era, 73 and 74, which I think is by far Frank's best era. George Duke was in the band the entire time. Tom Fowler was the bass player the entire time, except for a couple dates at the end of this tour when he broke his hand. So this era, which is Duke and Fowler, Bruce Fowler is almost there the entire time. He's not in this tour. Ruth Underwood is almost there the entire time. She wasn't on the previous tour. It had 6 different tours. 3 in 73, 3 in 74. And in ranking those, the 3 tours that had 2 drummers were farther back on the list than the 3 tours that only had 1 drummer. 2 tours that had only Ralph Humphrey, and 1 tour that only had Chester Thompson. And I do think that the tours with the 2 drummers limited Frank and limited just the way he was able to either express himself or express himself in solos, or just the way he was thinking creatively. And I think the guitar solos during those tours, and just as great as many of those tours are, and I have praise for all 3 of them, I do think that having two drummers and a percussionist limited him. And by the time he gets to this tour, and he's just spent, fall 73, winter 74, all of April, May 74 with two drummers, and he now only has one drummer. And the drummer he has is Chester Thompson, who is really funky and really has this really, I call it like stumble funk. It's just the way I refer to it in my head, is like, it seems like the solo's going along and we're jamming, and Frank hits this weird like staccato riff or something, and Thompson just does this like duh, 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 like beat where it almost seems like it's falling apart or it's coming to an end, and Frank almost always like mimics him where it feels like they're just gonna stop, but then usually Frank will like get on some riff, and then Chester's right back in the pocket and then rips off some lightning quick little fill that is like complete opposite of this thing he stumbled through like 20 seconds earlier. And he does that in so many solos. And early in the tour, it almost seemed like Frank wanted more of Chester, and Chester was a lot busier in a lot of sort of his support during solos, or either Chester thought he had to fill more space because Humphrey wasn't there. So the first couple weeks, maybe the first month, there's a slightly different vibe, I think. But by the time you hit Europe, so this tour is from June 28th through the beginning of December. And so by the time you hit Europe in like late August, right? Maybe, yeah, late August, early September. But by the time you hit Europe, there's a completely chill vibe about this band. Like the music's not chill. It's really high intensity. They're playing things like Akin Azar for View at like lightning speed. Some of the jams are ridiculous, but there is a vibe of like, just like this band is just jamming a lot of the time. And it doesn't really feel like it feels like no other Frank band that he's ever had, I don't think. I just think they joke around. Everybody's telling jokes. They're joking about each other. That there's a lot of secret words, but the secret words are mostly like secret themes, and they revolve around like Marty, the road manager, and his love of dogs, apparently. Booger Bears, which are like groupies. There's whatever happened in Memphis, I don't know, but Memphis on the Moon is a whole thread. You get Why Don't You Sharpen It Then is this running like motif. So you get kind of these stories, and you get bits and pieces of it, and you get in jokes, and then you got the whole thread about like going to Europe and dealing with like hotels there and the language differential and trying to order food and that whole thing that's like documented in room service over and over again. So you have this very like self-contained insular vibe that doesn't kind of feel, it feels connected to other eras, but it also feels like this is just a really good band having a really good time, playing incredible music. And yes, Frank is conducting them, and yes, Frank is making the decisions, but there are so many moments where solos just kind of go on and kind of fall apart, and then Duke starts to solo again, or Brock just starts improvising lyrics, but Frank's not conducting anything, it seems. It almost like he's like, dude, do something, man. There's a chill vibe to so much of this. I've started like 19 different threads here, I've realized. To wrap up this one, I was a big Deadhead back in the day, and I managed to see most of my shows on the West Coast because I was from the West Coast, but I was lucky enough to be able to travel to the East Coast and see a bunch of shows on the East Coast. And let me tell you something, East Coast Dead shows and West Coast Dead shows are completely different experiences. The energy level on the East Coast is insane, and the band responds to that energy level, and it has a completely different vibe, and the performances are usually of a completely different nature. West Coast audiences don't go crazy. West Coast audiences are a little maybe more musical snobbery-ish, in that they're a lot more subdued and quiet, but they're listening, man, and they're paying attention. And yeah, when you do a good job, they're going to give it up and show it to you, but they're definitely not bringing the same energy as the East Coast. This is a West Coast tour. This, to me, sounds like they should just be playing like Jerry used to play on the river, on the Red River, the Russian River, these shows at this outdoor stage, and people are swimming in the river while it happens. That's what this feels like, man. Like just on the river, man, just play these songs. Yes, they're still awesome, excellent Frank songs, but there is a vibe to this, that to me and my sort of California West Coast mentality, I live in Texas, I was born and raised in California, there is a very chill West Coast vibe in this tour, that it's not there consistently, but it's there enough that it just sort of like, oh no, into Son of Orange County, into More Trouble Every Day. That to me, especially the oh no, Son of Orange County, that vibe kind of permeates, I think, the entire tour. And there's just this like, everybody's doing their job, man, and everybody's doing it perfectly. Wasn't I talking about the band at one point? I got distracted. Anyways, here's who's in this band. Frank Zappa on guitar and vocals, Chester Thompson on drums. Again, this is the only time, his only tour when it's just him. Ruth Underwood on percussion. She was gone for the previous tour, the 10-year anniversary. She is back. There were a lot of interesting moments. One of them well documented on You Can't Do That on Stage Volume 2, the Montana, where Frank counts off a song too quickly, and Ruth she either has the wrong mallets, or it's too fast for her for whatever reason. Apparently there were a lot of issues with temperature on stage, and that affected Ruth's ability to either hold on to something or, make moves. But there's a lot of joking around with Ruth, and she puts up with a lot, but it all seems pretty good natured, and she seems okay with it. But there's some, it results in the awesome Montana, which is like a really, really slowed down version. It's a ballad at this tempo. And there's a couple other songs where Frank messes around with the tempo and jokes with Ruth just because he's having an issue holding the mallets. But absolutely amazing work. This tour has the best version of Redunzel, because Ruth and Duke do that full sort of intro part before the guitar solos, which are usually fantastic on this tour. And so she gets that sort of spotlight in Redunzel. And she also gets solos sometimes in like Dupree's Paradise and other songs. Or just improvisations. She gets some solo time, which is pretty cool. George Duke on keyboards and vocals. Tom Fowler on bass. He broke his hand at the end of the tour. So for one show, you get Michael Urso. And during the Michael Urso show, Frank introduces Tom Fowler as Mystery Pointer, and apparently he had a chart with keys on it, like, A, B, C, D minor, stuff like that, and he would point to the different keys, and that's how Urso would know what to play. I think that's my understanding of why he was there and what he was doing, but he was on stage helping Urso play these parts, by communicating with him. And then for the following 5 shows, James Bird's Legs Yeoman, he stepped in and played a bass. And the absolutely amazing thing about all of those shows is not only are there just absolutely fantastic moments, and Frank actually decides to bring out like songs he hadn't played all tour or only played once or twice, but even playing the hard, difficult stuff, and the bass player is only able to drop in at every one or something and not able to play the other notes. They sound amazing. They sound great. And everybody else in the band is able to compensate for the lack of Tom Fowler, who is he's been the bass player for the past 2 years, sort of the skeleton that, all the flesh and the muscle and everything goes on. You've removed the skeleton, but still the body is holding its shape. So you have Tom Fowler on bass, and then all those other people on bass. And then I mentioned Napoleon Murphy Brock on vocals, sax, and flute. And I know he is someone that possibly people will not like this tour as much because of him. Either his playing, I think his sax playing is excellent. I think his flute playing is excellent. Mostly because of his singing. He does a lot of screeching and a lot of noise making, but I find him on this tour to be absolutely perfect. He obviously gets along great with Frank and George and Chester and Ruth and all of them. There is an incredible vibe among these people. They make each other laugh. I think that is infectious. I think that translates great into the music. And there were some moments, especially as the tour goes on, where he gets solos, especially his saxophone solos, and he's given what seemed I think 4 or 5 minute, really long chances to really just take his time to explore an idea and create a solo, and they're great. They're just phenomenal. And a lot the accompaniment that George Duke provides underneath, there are many a show where there's a very cheesy 70s almost lounge vibe to what George is playing, and Napoleon is responding with his sax playing in almost an equally cheesy way, but it works perfectly because before it is usually chaos and afterwards will be like a Frank solo that's like blasphemous. So like it all works so well. So the singer, saxophone player, flute player does not bother me at all on this tour. And I actually think he's kind of entertaining, and I think he does a good job in songs like Room Service, where he has to like improvise with Frank. He gets opportunities when, especially as the tour went on, or even actually throughout most of the tour. You had moments where the guitar solos just kind of meandered and went on for a while, and Frank would let the lead singer like improvise lines or start joking around and singing some random stuff. And then anytime during like the Montana into the George improv things where George is hitting the finger cymbal doo, 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 and he hurts himself, a lot of that George is doing stuff and he's interacting with the singer and it works well, and a lot of different people get a chance to do little solos, and we get a lot of good funk jams. So before I get into songs, where can you hear this band if you are not already familiar with this band? Really, they're horribly underrepresented in the official catalog. I hope this will be fixed, though they do have pretty much two sort of complete concerts. The first one released was Volume 2 of You Can't Do That on Stage Anymore. That is a bunch of stuff from the Helsinki shows. I think it's a compilation of 3 different shows, but the only set list I've ever seen from these shows are literally just the songs from this release, just on different dates. So I don't really know, but this is a great release. Has one of the best. The Inca Rhodes guitar solo from One Size Fits All comes from this show. It has a ridiculous Pygmy Twilight that's Frank at his most like Black Sabbath-y metal-ish, I think. Just phenomenal energy. And then the Montana is somebody yells out whipping post. Frank jokes around they're going to play whipping post. They start the song. Ruth can't play it. She either has the wrong mallet. I think she grabs the wrong mallets the first time, and then the next time it's too fast. So Frank counts it off really slowly, so it's a really slow ballad version. The guitar solo just kind of completely falls apart, but it doesn't. It like works perfectly. It's like this weird Grateful Dead fractalized version of a guitar solo. Just amazing. I think it was my number 3 of my top 55 pre-albums released during Frank's life, right? It was top number 3, I think. And then another show, A Token of His Extreme, which was a TV show that they filmed in August of 74 in LA, KCET. And this is where the rest of the Inca Rhodes on One Size Fits All comes from, everything but the solo. This has a ridiculously good Florentine Pogan with a great solo at the end of it, that if I ever make a video of my favorite post-Zappa release guitar solos, this solo will be in that top 10. Another great release. But the funny thing is, I would say that I would not put either one of these shows or even releases in my top 10 of like favorite 74 shows. There are so many ridiculous shows out there that I don't even think these two would like make the top 10. Some of the performances, the Inca Rhodes, the Pygmy, but as a whole, I think there are shows that have more consistent, wow, ridiculous, amazing moments, even as early as the July shows, a month into the tour. So you get those released, Ruthie and Babette on Volume 1, The Smell My Beard and Booger Man on Volume 4. During this tour, they would still play Montana, and then they would go into the Dinta where George hits his finger cymbal, and then there's like improvs and jams and stuff like that. Sometimes these would go on for a long time, especially as we got towards the end of the tour. But not always going into Dupree's Paradise, sadly, but enough. But it would go into other things. Florentine Pogan a couple times, as on the Token of His Extreme release. What else? Bathtub Man and Space Boogers from One Shot Deal are from this tour. Cosmic Debris Jam and a Big Swifty Jam. Big Swifty was a song that was played, I think, only a handful of times, sadly. Really only once in like a big monster version. A couple times just sort of like, I think, a rotating solo, couple short little solos. And then who knows if that Helsinki one, it's on the You Can't Do That on Stage Volume 2 is just the end of it, but who knows if that was an editing thing and there was a full-blown one. I don't, but I'm sure somebody does. Merely a Blues in A, or Merely a Blues. The Frank Zappa plays the mother. Frank Zappa plays the music of Frank Zappa. There's just like a blues jam from the Paris show on there. And Frank did that a handful of times where he just like, we're just going to play the blues. And they played the blues. And then on Quadriophiliac, Venetian Time Bandits is a More Trouble Every Day solo. So those are the only places you can hear this band. All of those places are great. But they give you a good sense of the songs that this band played. This band played a lot of the same material that Frank had been playing since like 73 and 74, since 72, Montana and Cosmic Debris, 72 and 73, and then early 74. But all the songs are in their best version now. Inca Roads, after maybe a little like over anxiousness early in this tour, settled into its perfect version, the version that we essentially get on One Size Fits All. It came into its own on this tour. Florentine Pogan with a guitar solo, perfect version on this tour. Redunzel with that awesome Underwood Duke intro, amazing guitar solos, amazing Duke solo, comes into its own. It's perfect on this tour. Anytime Dupree's Paradise is played, I don't know which tour was my favorite Dupree's Paradise, but that's a song that's been perfect for 2 years, so who cares? But what else was played on this tour? This is my last tour video, so I might talk longer than normal. But yeah, Dupree's Paradise was the one big monster song on here, where you generally got you got the intro with the George intro and all that, the storytelling and the jams. Then you usually got a Brock solo of some sort, a Fowler solo, a drum solo, a really exploratory Zappa solo. Early in the tour, Duke sometimes got in there with solos, but just beautiful. I think probably one of the weakest ones from this tour is the one that is on stage 2, but I think that might be edited and where they cut off the guitar solo and stuck that Satuma finished tango in there, but I don't know. So what is played on this tour? Oh, so Tom Waits. So here's another thing. One of the reasons I like this tour is I think every Frank tour has these like one-off performances or a song that only pops up a handful of times, and like you can speak to like, this makes this tour really interesting because this happened a couple times in the beginning or this happened a couple times in the end. This tour has that, like all tours have that. But I think every instance of whatever happened on this tour is better than almost every instance of what happened on another tour. Like every one of them is like just perfect. And why they might be the same thing that happened on other tours, on this tour, when combined with all the other ones that didn't happen on other tours, makes this tour the best. So Tom Waits at least performed twice with them that we know of. The first time his actual performance is cut off on a really horrible sounding tape that is really bad in sound quality, but has a lot of such great moments that even the bad sound quality can't like make you go, that's not a great moment. Again, attesting to the power of this tour, and I'll talk about some of those moments after this. But he also plays on a really good sound quality Boston show, 11/9, I think is the date. And they start playing Old 55, the Tom Waits song off his, I think Closing Time is the name of that album, right? Off that album. And a beautiful song, except this time Tom Waits comes out and tells a couple jokes. They're not really funny. They're kind of funny jokes, but the way Tom tells them is fantastic. But to hear George playing like the Old 55 melody, and my understanding is at the first show, the one in which his performance is cut off, they actually sing the song. Tom Waits comes out and actually sings Old 55. Here I think he just tells jokes, and then they go into Dupree's Paradise. So anyways, really good. 200 Years Old pops up at the end of the tour during one of the, we have a brand new bass player, let's do something brand new. It's pretty much him saying the lyrics and then just destroying the landscape with some guitar. Any Downers pops up, the Any Downers, at one of the very last shows, one of those, we have a brand new bass player, let's do an Any Downers jam during Montana. That pops up towards the end of the tour. Apostrophe pops up a couple times, but also during the end of the tour when we had a brand new bass player, but then also in the awesome Halloween show, when Bruce Fowler visited and played with them. There was a really good Big Swiftie on that show also. What else was played that isn't on any of those things? Can't Afford No Shoes debuted on this tour as a Ralphie. Ralphie stuffs his shoes. I still don't like it. But it's on a really strange show. I think that is also the strange show that has the at the end of Don't You Ever Wash That Thing, during that sort of chaotic jam, Frank starts playing like the Zoota Lures chords, which he would play throughout this tour. They popped up a number of times. Very definitively a Zoota Lures progression. And then they went into like pretty much a full-blown flambe jam. And then after playing flambe, they then went back rickettily kind of into Echinus Art for View. But that was at the same show that Can't Afford No Shoes made its debut. And then I think it came back on the New Year's show as Can't Afford No Shoes and not Ralphie Stuffs His Shoes. Caravan with the drum solo, because why not? Dickie's Such an Asshole. That's never been a favorite song of mine, but I love it on this tour. Dynamo Hum was played, but with a really nice, good funk, because this band plays its funk well. Don't Eat the Yellow Snow. The Don't Eat the Yellow Snow, the first part was very hyperactive and was kind of a weird hybrid of the album version and the 73 live version. Didn't have audience participation in the Nanook Rubs It. Sounds great because this band is phenomenal, but only popped up like for 2 weeks in November. Halloween, couple weeks in November, but I don't think it was played earlier, and I don't think it was played later, and then it just kind of disappeared. So interesting. There's a show, really good sounding show, 11/6 Syria Mosque show from Pennsylvania, that I think was one of the more average shows on this tour. There's only a couple, and even the average shows are great. But it's a really good show because it's got one of these random, like less than a dozen Don't Eat the Yellow Snows on it. What else? Yeah, Eat That Question popped up on a set list, and a very brief you can hear the riff briefly on a tape, and then the tape gets cut off. So what the whole thing was, nobody knows, but apparently it's here. Help I'm a Rock on that horrible sounding Tom Waits show, that gets played, and this is the instance of something that is so incredibly good that even on a really like a C plus B minus tape sound quality, you're like, man, that is good, even though it sounds so incredibly horrible. What else? I'm Not Satisfied, which is one of my just favorite of the original Mother songs that gets played in this era of Frank. Absolutely phenomenal song. Let's Make the Water Turn Black pops up. We got a number of these songs that were played on the April-May tour. Was like a Mother's 10th anniversary tour. A number of these songs were kind of popped up every so often as sort of holdovers from the previous tour. And that was another thing I wanted to say earlier that I think I forgot. This was only a 6-piece band where, for the last 2 years, Frank had horn players, Bruce Fowler that he had to give solos to, Walt Fowler on the previous tour. Jeff Simmons is a rhythm guitar player who also kind of got some solos. 2 drummers, deal with solos there. You had Jean-Luc Ponty before that. You had Sal Marquez. You had, the Petit Wazoo and Grand Wazoo tours. This is the first tour where he's got a keyboardist who's always been there. His saxophonist and his flutist are also the lead singer, so that's a lot easier to give them time. So Frank just has more time to kind of do stuff, and it just seems like a lot of that stuff is him just kind of either popping up a random song every once in a while, or just going on these really lengthy jams, or just I don't know. There was a very playful but laid back sort of experimental, but not like radically experimental vibe to this tour, but just like we're just jamming, having fun, experimental vibe. Yeah, I don't know. Mud Shark was played, because of course it was. Oh, Night Owl, a cover song of a 50s song. This is actually kind of a sad story. This guy, Lance Loud, sang this song both times that they played it, And Lance Loud was a character, a person on what was essentially the very first reality show called The American Family, in which they followed what I believe was an actual family, like every week. And it was, like the very first reality show. And apparently everything just went horribly wrong. And like the parents split. I think the daughter got like pregnant, but she wasn't like married and happy. She didn't want to be pregnant. I think the son was in the closet, but it was like he came out like live on air, and that was like there was backlash to that. Anyways, it was a mess. But this guy, Lance Loud, who I'm pretty sure is the son, shows up and sings Night Owl twice, which is just weird. Pajama People, that's one of those that's interesting to sort of watch in real time. It got played sort of early on and then kind of disappeared and then popped up every so often. And it just kind of got a little bit better every time, but never really, you didn't really hear that thing click until the final performance, which is again was one of those we have a brand new bass player, let's try this show, where it just works, and all of a sudden Frank figured out what Pajama People was. So that was pretty interesting to kind of witness that in real time. Pygmy Twilight, one of the highlights of the tour. They played Gloria once, but either Napoleon, the singer didn't remember the singer knew the words, but he improvised some words about Rashid. And then Frank told a story about a bunch of stuff. Road Ladies was played as an encore early on in the tour. San Bernardino debuted on Halloween. Son of Green Jeans was played once, but it was kind of rushed and wasn't that big of a deal. Stinkfoot, early in the tour on the first North American leg, the set lists were pretty varied every night as far as what the opening song was and stuff. Stinkfoot popped up, debuted after like a month, popped up a couple more times, and then when they came back in Europe, every show started with the tush 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 into Stinkfoot. So then that was established, which is a great way to open a show. Willie the Pimp popped up once as just your kick-ass guitar solo vehicle with singing, but still absolutely wicked. And yeah, so just the best tour Frank ever played. What shows should you check out? Any shows. There are 3 really good shows early on. 7/19, July 19th, 20th, and 21st. Anyways, those are good shows. Anything in November is a great show. The Halloween shows are pretty good. Every show is good. Like at the worst, these shows are like a great band playing great music and with great solos. Like that's the bottom. Everything else above that is just great. Really weird, crazy jams early in the tour. Long, falling apart, rambling jams later in the tour. Random. I'm going to stop rambling about this. This is the best tour Frank ever played. I would say the more shows you hear, the more you'll be convinced that this is true. And I was in no way focused for this video. Sorry for rambling so much. Probably should have organized my thoughts better. But now, I don't know. I'm sad that this journey is over. But anyways, on to something new next. Thank you all for watching. Let me know your comments about this tour and what you think about it and all that stuff. What I messed up, what I missed, what you're gonna say. At least one person's gonna be like, man, this is your favorite tour and you didn't even know this. Yeah, man, it's crazy, isn't it? All right, peace, y'all. Thanks for watching. Bye.